anxiety.
We all know that at some point during our workday, we can get a little sluggish and maybe distracted and put off some things on the to-do list a little bit for later. And that's why we have Dr. Megan Hayes, a clinical psychologist from UAB in studio, to kind of break it all down for us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Shelley?
Fantastic. I feel like I'm always busy, but sometimes I go, do I use my time correctly? And there are a lot of things that can distract us, right?
Right, absolutely. You have a great point. I do this myself. We've got a block of time. We think we've used it pretty well, but somehow at the end of the day, we've only checked off a few items on our to-do list, right?
Yeah, and I think some of these are common sense things that we know, but we don't really stop and say, I got to stop doing this. So what's one of the biggest things that you can do that keeps you from getting necessarily done some of the things that you need to?
Right, I think a really big one is multitasking. And I always say multitasking in quotes because it seems like a lot of people pride themselves on that, right? I'm a great multitasker. You'll even see in job descriptions, we need a great multitasker in a fast-paced environment. But in reality, our brains aren't so great at splitting our attention. Think about, driving while texting, for example. There's a reason why that's not a good recipe.
Right.
So each time we have to reorient ourselves to a new task, let's say you're working on a document for work, suddenly you get an email ding, you check that. Well, that takes a bit of time, right? And we have to reshift our attention back to the task at hand. And over time, it can cost us up to 40% of our productive time. So those little dings and checks that we do tend to pull our focus away and actually make us less productive.
And that's kind of difficult in this day and age because more and more people are doing more things on the job, and because we've got fewer people in the office and more people are having to do more things. But I've also got to think, one of the first things that I do is when I come into work, I check the emails, and that takes up a lot of time. It really does.
That's right. Email is one of the biggest time sucks that we can have for our productivity. It's a necessary part of most jobs these days, but it's one that we want to have some boundaries around. So instead of checking every email right as it comes in, what I recommend is that people block time in their day, that they're going to check those emails and other messages so that they're limiting it or putting some boundaries on it so we're not constantly shifting attention throughout the day.
Yeah, well, a couple of other things that could go kind of hand in hand, and maybe we don't sleep enough. I know that we all could be guilty of that. And sometimes we end up putting in longer hours at work too.
Absolutely. So Americans have been sleeping less and less over the past few decades. And a lot of people think that sleep doesn't have a huge impact on their productivity. They may wear that with a badge of honor, like I don't need much sleep. But for us to be functioning at our cognitive best, we really need to be aiming for that 7 to 9 hours a day, which is the CDC recommendation, in order for our cognitive functioning to be at its best and for us to be the most productive.
Yeah, sometimes you can put into your phone, type in a schedule for what you want to get done during a day. I write things down that I can look at and go, did I get this? Having a plan's key for maybe fixing all this, right?
Absolutely. One of the biggest issues with not having great productivity is when we go in without a plan. So one of the best solutions is to have a plan, but not just a to-do list in and of itself, but a plan where we call this time boxing, where we have times around what we're going to be doing. So for example, if you need to write a paper, you might need to put 2 hours of a time block in your calendar. So not only what I need to do, but assigning a time to that.
Yeah, we'd love to have 2 hours to talk with you about some of these things going on because there's so much that you can help people with. We'll have to have you back, and we certainly do appreciate your time, okay?
Thanks for having me.